Hi everyone, today I read out from Shyamalima Saikia's newly published book, Heirloom, which is a collection of short stories and personal essays. And this is the cover that you get to see. I was part of the release of this book during the book fair, and I have this particular story which I'd like to read out for you. But before that, let me tell you this is a short story, but you must read out the long stories at your own pace and time when you buy this particular book that by Heirloom from Amazon, and you must buy it because she has a fantastic, beautiful way of writing and placing things and weaving stories. And this is one story which I'd like to read out for all of you, which I really liked because these are some of my thoughts. These are the thoughts that I could relate to. Okay, so the name of the story is When an Owl Hoots. The month of Fagun arrived with the gusts of wind lashing the bamboo trees. As a child, Hewali was terrified of walking below the tall, dense, and dark bamboo trees for fear of ghosts residing in them. Interestingly, now from her apartment in the first floor, adjacent to the bamboo trees, she could see them in a new light. What looked fearful from below is rather pleasing here, for it is another world sheltering a myriad array of birds, from the placid doves, the ever-cawing crows, the friendly miners, to the loud, white-breasted water hens singing out a chorus. Now, the nights became less fearful, for even then, some pretty little raven, sorry, the nights became less fearful, for even then, some pretty little avian would chirp melodiously. But one day, Hewali caught sight of an owl from her window sitting on one of the bamboo branches. It was facing her so that she dreaded to look at it directly. She closed the windows immediately, lest the owl should enter her room. Later in the evening, she heard the owl hooting nearby. Is it an ill omen? Thought Hewali, perturbed. Minutes later, much to her relief, she heard her neighbor shoo off the bird. Yet she spent a restless night. 2 busy days passed. Thank goodness there's no bad news coming from anywhere, she heaved a sigh of relief. From then on, the owl too became familiar for her. Why is the owl ostracized by people? Perhaps, like ostracizing human beings for their color, race, and religion, animals too are shunned irrationally, she pondered. Isn't this a wonderful story when it comes to the present days? We are so swayed by superstitious thoughts in our mind that oftentimes we forget that we are in the 21st century. And we forget that we must be more scientific in our thoughts, more rational in our thoughts, more practical in our thoughts, instead of being swayed by some occurrence in our life which we relate to, or we kind of attach that to some occurrence later on in the future. And if something happens, like we heard in the story by Shyamalima, where the owl was hooting, and Hewali starts thinking that it must be a bad omen. So there are many times, not just a story. The story is just a way of telling us that why should we be swayed by these kind of thoughts at all? So for me also, when I was growing up, I remember my mother used to tell me about many things, and she would tell me there is a crow which is cawing a lot, so there will be a lot of guests today. And then when her comb used to fall on the floor, she would say, okay, and she would rap it on the table 2-3 times, and she used to say, I think probably there'll be more guests today because the crow is going, my comb has fallen, so maybe we'll have a lot of guests. And if perchance guests do come in, then she'll say, look, I told you in the morning that the crow was cawing and my comb fell down, and now we have all these guests. I think this is all coincidental. Whatever was, if we had guests, these guests they had plans to come to our house. It wasn't because the crow was cawing. So I think we as people of the 21st century, we need to start thinking more practically. We need to start thinking in a more rational manner, in a more scientific manner. And you know what happens when we start thinking like this? Even our children start thinking like that. But thankfully, what happens to my son is that even if I tell him something that, this is what will happen because this is what has been taught to me. And he would always ask me for a scientific proof. He would always tell me, okay, fine, I understand that you're telling me this, but give me a scientific proof of what you're saying. So I feel that we have to start thinking like these new gen kids, because you can't fool them. You can't fool them by telling them that this has happened, so let us attach something to it and say that, if you are a liar, you will go to hell, and you will be fried in a frying pan, and you will not see me supporting you, something like that. And then they would again say, okay, give me a proof of that. Tell me of one person who has returned and who has gone through the process and has told you that this is what is going to happen. So you can't fool young people. So, and let us not be fooled also by these superstitious kind of talks or conversations that we need to have. We have to start becoming more practical, because this is what is going to get us ahead. Not superstitions, not unscientific thoughts, but practical thoughts. Science is going to get us ahead, because if you look around you, everything is related to science. If something is happening, it is related to science. Just look around you. I'm not going to delve deep into that, but let us just ponder on Shyamalima's story about when an owl hoots. What happens then? Do we think of it as a bad omen, or do we think that the owl is meant to hoot anyway? The owl can't make any other sound except for hooting. So, is she talking about being superstitious or not being superstitious? Because her story ends on a very positive note and asking us this question: if we are just like we start thinking that about a human in the same manner, do we also think of animals in that same manner? Just like, for example, when a cat crosses the road, there are many people who have noticed who stops their cars or their bikes and they don't cross till some other car crosses over, so that the omen is taken away by the other person. Let's not do all that, because a cat is meant to cross. I mean, if the cat is crossing, it's going from one part of the road to the other end. It's not doing anything else. It's not giving you a bad omen. Let's start thinking like that. If you start thinking like that, you're going to be much more happier, because you will then not be bothered about a cat crossing your road, or the owl hooting, or the crows cawing, like my mother used to say, and the guests coming. Let the guests come in. Let everyone be welcome in your home, because that is what we are meant to do. We are supposed to welcome everyone into our homes. We are supposed to be happy. We are supposed to live a free life, and we are supposed to live with the thought of science in our heads and not anything else. So more readings coming up very soon. I'm going to come up with more readings from our writers. I love to read the write-ups, the creative works of different writers that we have in our community, and I'm going to come back with more. So please stay tuned, and in the meanwhile, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also give your comments. I keep waiting for them. Love you. Take care.